Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. Now I'm here today this morning to cover how Manchester United have picked up their first win in nearly a decade at Anfield as Ruben Amorim's men have beat Liverpool 2-1. We're going to talk today about how Manchester United were able to beat Liverpool at Anfield. But just before we do that, I do want to say a massive sort of thank you and a bit of gratitude from myself and the team here, because over the last couple of weeks, the support on the channel has been absolutely amazing. We're nearing on 40,000 subscribers on YouTube. And if you could give us a sub or a follow on the platform that you're watching on, then please be sure to do so if you enjoy the content, because it helps us out more than you know. Me, myself, I'm up for Young Talent of the Year for a broadcast award, and that is all down to sort of what you lads have, given me here with the community we've built at the Overlap Breakdown. So just right off the top, I wanted to say a massive thank you to the audience out there. And if you can't tell, I'm in a really good mood this morning because I'm actually able to come into the studio and talk positively about Manchester United. So even though we did win 2-1, obviously there was a lot of luck involved in this game. I think a lot of people have looked at the XG. I think there was a stat knocking about that Cody Gakpo had more expected goals than Manchester United. But I think there's a lot more contextually to this game to sort of bring in. Obviously, United first win at Anfield since 2016 with Wayne Rooney's rebounded goal off the post in 2016. So I'm going to tell you now that Manchester United have won away at defending champions in the Premier League back-to-back seasons for the first time in 117 years, with 2-2-1 wins against Man City and Liverpool. And I think going into this game, there was a lot of sort of question marks as to the lineup that Ruben Amorim had put out on paper. So obviously Benjamin Sesko was dropped, which me and Josh Williams previewed on the channel as to be sort of the hot spot for where we were looking at against Virgil van Dijk and Konate, thinking that United were going to go very, very long. Now, I want to speak in this piece especially about how important the long ball nature was of Manchester United and why it was such a big component of this entire game. Before I do that, I actually just want to show you sort of a bit of emphasis. Seny Lamans actually had 44 long goalkeeper kicks in this game, with 8 of them being successful. But I've actually got the sort of graph on your screen now to show you how many and just the sheer amount of volume he was putting into them passes. And I'm not just talking about, oh, he played a few short. These are all of his passes in this game, and all of them pretty much, besides one, were long. So I am going to go into talking about how Manchester United managed to win the game, and to do that, we're going to talk about the first goal. Now, in the first goal sort of scenario, what we have is Manchester United are a little bit up the pitch in sort of this, 3-box 5 shape that we've seen here, which is usually what we've known Ruben Amorim teams to set up in. Now, as we mentioned in the piece where we previewed, Liverpool like to press in somewhat of a 4-2-4, and that's with Dominic Szoboszlai, who was actually playing a little bit closer to Alexander Isak in this game, meant that they had a little bit more of reliable, pressing moments in the game. So what we can imagine is that if Liverpool have pressed right up onto Manchester United United looking to go long, and throughout this game, I want to tell you right now, I've got another stat on your screen which says that Manchester United went long with 26% of their passes against Liverpool at Anfield, which is the most of any visiting team in 2025. The second is Accrington Stanley. So that just puts into perspective sort of how clear the idea was for Manchester United to go long right from the off. And I want to explain to you sort of why they were trying to do that. So structurally, in the 3-4-3, one thing that is always given to you, especially if you use sort of the 2 midfielders and the 2 10s, is this central overload in the middle here. What do Liverpool do? They press in a 4-2-4, which makes them really exposed in this area. Again, me and Josh Williams covered that if you can make these midfielders gamble between the 2 10s and the 2 pivot midfielders, then Manchester United could overrun the midfield. Now, in my opinion, in the preview, I was thinking it was going to be a little bit more playing through Liverpool, a bit of a slick passing moves. It wasn't that. It was long ball galore. And as we just mentioned, the most long balls in terms of percentage-wise that Anfield have seen from a visiting team's perspective. So Benjamin Sesko was actually obviously removed from the lineup. He was dropped and Cunha come in with Mason Mount and Bryan Mbeumo. So imagine Lamans is on the ball here and we're against the 4-2-4 of Liverpool's press. Now if this ball is pinged all the way forward and it's Van Dijk who's potentially contesting the area, which it was for Bryan Mbeumo's first goal. If you can see just already structurally the amount of blue counters that Manchester United have in front of the ball, ready to win the seconds, you can see how this is an immediate concern for Liverpool. And what happened a couple times in the game was that the ball was being won by either Konate or Van Dijk, and the aerial wasn't really being contested. It was more letting a little bit of a loose ball, and this ball was being headed right back into the front, into sort of in front of the midfield. Now, with Manchester United's 3-4-3 under Ruben Amorim, one thing they've always had is that ability to sort of latch onto these second balls. A lot of people have sort of criticised Amorim this season, including myself, for sort of the lack of tactical tweaks and the lack of, improvements to his side. But one of the most standout improvements from Manchester United this season under Ruben Amorim is their ability to work hard and compete for second balls. The physical levels are some of the best we've seen post Alex Ferguson, and that, in my opinion, is not a wild thing to say. They are very, very good physically this season. And that was actually backed through with Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes. Now, Bruno Fernandes was actually starting on the right-hand side, but he was pushing a little bit nearer towards the ball. Casemiro was playing as that one anchor, and that gave Manchester United sort of them four bodies in between the lines to pick up from these knockdowns off Virgil van Dijk, which is exactly how Bryan Mbeumo scored his first goal. So, if I just push it back a little bit, it was pretty interesting to me how Matthias de Ligt actually said very recently after the game, he said that the plan was to target the space in behind the fullbacks. And now, if you can imagine that this is sort of Manchester United's shape, as we mentioned in the game against Liverpool, these two number 10s, these are asking the questions of the wide centre-halves, of Konate and Virgil van Dijk. If the ball is dropped into Bryan Mbeumo here and Ahmad is pinning that wing-back, this asks the question of Virgil van Dijk to step out and play man-to-man. If you watch the preview that we did cover on the channel, Liverpool always want a +1 in defence. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if they're defending against one striker, they want to manage that 2v1. Now, not having Sesko here and having Matheus Cunha, who plays a lot more in front and who is a very more slick turner and can probably make the ball stick more consistently, that is actually asking the question of Liverpool is if they can go 3v2 in Manchester United's favour. These players weren't really roaming out here. They weren't really exchanging the roles with the fullbacks. They were pretty much ganging up on Konate and Virgil van Dijk, especially when the transitions were happening. And the space in behind Kerkez and Conor Bradley revealed itself when these players were on the ball and they wanted to make these diagonal sprints into here. So when the ball was being run inside with the fullback, obviously meant that Manchester United's wing backs had to track it inwards, but then leaves massive amounts of space here. And we've seen this beautifully for sort of a couple Amad Diallo cutbacks, the one for Bruno, of course, and then Bryan Mbeumo's goal very early on in the match. But I'm now going to move on into sort of what Manchester United were doing off the ball in terms of their defensive block, which made it a little bit hard for Liverpool to create chances despite them having such a high expected goals total throughout the game. If you're enjoying the video and want more tactical analysis and podcasts, please press the subscribe button below and hit the bell to enable post notifications. Now, just to latch off the last segment that I mentioned, Manchester United's long ball figure per game has been 67 against Arsenal, 56 against Fulham, 41 against Grimsby, etc., etc. Against Liverpool, 76 long balls with a 25% success rate. So definitely one to watch throughout this game is that Manchester United were almost trying to beat Liverpool by not wanting the ball or not desiring the first ball initially. And the game was basically, from a possession standpoint, all about collapsing on the second balls with that central compactness in that 3-4-3. Now, I am going to move on into Manchester United off the ball, and to be honest, as a Manchester United fan, you cannot say that the luck wasn't a thing in this game. You know, Cody Gakpo, I think, hit the bar 3 times, obviously got the goal in the end, but this is a very, very weird sort of game and pattern from Manchester United. So Manchester United created the most goals, most expected goals at Anfield since Opta have been tracking the metric in the Premier League. In comparison to that, Liverpool actually created the most expected goals at Anfield against Manchester United since Opta have been tracking it as well. So more expected goals than the 7-0, more expected goals than the 2-2, the 3-1, the 0-0, the 4-0, the 2-0, the 2-0-0s before that. There's a lot of games here where the expected goals figure is looming around 1.9, 2.8, 2.3. And in this game, Manchester United had 1.35 expected goals, which is the most that they've had. And that all boiled down to their ability to do stuff on the ball and what they were doing on that end. But they've also conceded a lot of really high quality chances. Now, throughout the game, Manchester United were using this 5-4-1 block, and now the whole entire point of this was to deny the space for Liverpool between the lines. And they actually went man-to-man with everyone in defence. Luke Shaw was managing Alexander Isak on this side. Dominic Szoboszlai was playing more inside in the hole. Then we had players like Cody Gakpo, Mohamed Salah. The two fullbacks are making these really narrow moves. Gravenberch was pushed up into this left half space position. Kerkez was making underlaps here. And Liverpool didn't really adapt to Manchester United on the ball. There wasn't much emphasis from Slot in this game in comparison to what he's been doing throughout the season with Liverpool. If you watch the Palace game, he tried something completely different with Wirtz left wing. We thought he might try something, as we said in the preview, with Wirtz, maybe getting that extra body between the lines. But it was a very standard approach from Arne Slot, very much so in terms of getting your players on the pitch and hoping they sort of win you the game in the least sort of critical way possible. And in fairness to him, his players, given the chances they were given, should have won the game, but that wasn't the case. And I want to show you just a little bit why why they didn't look as fluid on the ball as you would expect despite the chances created. So it was the 5-4-1, and these movements from the fullbacks, as we were saying, trying to find these underlaps here. The wide players in sort of Bryan, Mbeumo and Mason Mount, very good off-the-ball pressers, keeping up with the defensive shape. When they made the runs here, they simply tracked them. Again, another thing is Manchester United didn't really apply ball pressure in the game. If the ball was moved back to the keeper, so let's say the ball's won in a loose one, and then he's passed it to Mamardashvili, Bryan Mbeumo, Cunha, Mason Mount, they never really stepped up with the press to push the ball back. Because when you step up in the press, especially in this sort of 5-4-1, if these three players jump, these massive pockets of space in between the lines open up. And Manchester United didn't want to give up that space. And in fact, one of the best chances that Liverpool actually created in the game all come from Manchester United stepping out, not in unison. And it was when Cunha and Mbeumo went with the ball as it was pressed back on a trigger, and they couldn't then win the ball high. A lot of space opened up centrally. I think Gravenberch got on the ball here. Looked up, there was no Manchester United player for multiple metres as they were all still set in this compact block. But one thing that I thought was quite interesting from a Manchester United point of view was that they did play in a 5-4-1, very compact defensively, but what they also did was sort of push Bryan Mbeumo a little bit higher on, and it made it a bit lopsided because Bryan Mbeumo was looking to sort of lock off where Kerkez was looking to play the ball, looking to receive the ball in sort of these pockets here. And that was making sure that they build up, then went through Conor Bradley and Ibrahim Konate. Now, if we all remember the Chelsea game, this, for Liverpool, is somewhat of a black hole in terms of possession. Neither player is very comfortable in sort of taking the ball, playing through the lines comfortably, consistently. And Manchester United asked Liverpool the question of, can you play down Conor Bradley and Ibrahim Konate's side? Now, I've got a stat here from Mark Stats on Twitter that shows Liverpool's danger zone ball losses. So this is obviously sort of the danger area within their half or the vicinity of their half where they've lost the ball. They lost the ball 26 times, with the vast majority of them by maybe 4 coming on that right-hand side. And the number of the player is highlighted on the graphic. You can see a lot of 5s. And that is Ibrahim Konate, again, who played a terrific throughout the game, was dominant in duels, but again, on the ball, somewhat of a bit, struggling. And that obviously isn't just his fault. It's Conor Bradley's fault. It's Salah's fault because he's all the way high up here and he's not comfortable in these areas. Gravenberch was often roaming out here. That didn't really work too well. But Manchester United, in the deep defence, they looked okay, especially in the first half. I think the second half, they got a little bit too emotional. I think Liverpool made a change, which was probably the biggest turning point of the game when Arne Slot decided to gamble on doing a 4-4-2, 4-2-4, where he put Ekatike Isak up front. I think he went with a midfield two of Curtis Jones and Florian Wirtz. I think even before Gakpo scored the equaliser, he was going to bring on Jeremy Frimpong. He had so much attacking quality on the pitch, and I think he was somewhat gambling on Liverpool to sort of break through Manchester United just by pure player quality and brute force. But I think that's somewhat confusion in terms of changing the lineup, changing the shape here and there, was where Liverpool should have maybe kept things a little bit simple because they were creating chances. So, yeah, I think in general, it was a very interesting game from a Manchester United point of view. A lot of criticism down to Ruben Amorim because of the lineup selections, because of other things in the game throughout the game. But in fairness, he's gone there. He's made very, very bold decisions. And when you make bold decisions in the the elite games, the biggest games of the season, when you make decisions as big as he has, you have to win them games. And I think credit to him because we did win the game. And I think in general, we played pretty well, especially in the first half. I think the second half, a lot of pressure was invited, but we played really well. You could see why he wanted maybe Cunha a little bit more mobile in front of the two defenders rather than a sort of focal point with two players off him. Maybe Mbeumo or Mount a little bit better down the sides, pressing, tracking the runners. Amad Diallo played a beautiful game, and to be honest, I just thought it was a really, really decent performance from Manchester United, and a very different one to how they played at Anfield last season, where they actually brought the ball out a little bit more from the defence. They won the second balls and they went with that sort of long ball game plan, but not as frequently as they did in this game from Lamans. And again, I must reiterate, the largest percentage of long balls to pass ratio of any team to visit Anfield in 2025 was Manchester United yesterday. So it's very key that we must mention that this actually was Amorim adapting. You know, Amorim has been talking in press conferences about how much he wants the ball, how much he favours control in the games. I think he even said in the press conference after how much he values control in the game, but he knew that this game was not the one for it. You know, the 4-2-4 press with Szoboszlai in behind Salah and Isak, were United good enough to build through that, you know, and play? And I think he noticed that maybe we weren't good enough, and a lot of Manchester United fans, including myself, I've been asking Ruben Amorim to adapt. I think me and Neil Harris even said that why not just go long if the build-up is as stale as it is? And he went long and, you know, it worked and we got out there with 3 points. And yeah, I think this is a major turning point potentially for Amorim. I think he's finally back-to-back Premier League wins for him, which finally has sort of left the room. But it's also it's the first win at Anfield since 2016, sort of the carrots are the basics. I think the basics, which we did so well in terms of the running, in terms of applying themselves. I thought the wing backs did really honest jobs. The outside central midfielders who were tracking the runners down there. I just thought it was a really honest performance, and I think it's the first time we've gone away to Manchester City, we've gone away to Liverpool, we've put in really good performances, but this was a completely different game plan from Amorim. It was a clear instruction to go long and compete for second balls directly from Lamans, and you know, well, for the first goal, it worked. So I can't really say that it was a bad game plan. He adapted, and the adaptation to the game worked. So, yeah, I think it's an absolutely huge sort of win for Manchester United. And I also want to explain to you why, like, Manchester United this season have played better when they have less possession of the ball, and this is exactly why. I think in general, Manchester United, when they defend in a 5-4-1, deep, compact, and they want to attack big spaces, that is when you're going to see the best of this Manchester United team at the moment. I know it might not be everyone's cup of tea, and I know everyone wants to see us sort of bring the ball out the back, play between the lines and play through the lines, but currently, in this moment, we do not have the central midfield pairing to do that consistently against the big teams. What do we have in the team? We have really direct wing backs who are really good at getting into these areas and arriving late on the line. Bryan Mbeumo, Cunha, very good Premier League proven physical players who can handle contact, you know, pluck the ball down and play. We've got really good box defenders in Matthias de Ligt, Harry Maguire, Lenny Yoro, Casemiro even, who can defend low against the bigger teams, win the vast majority of their duels. The corners, massive part of the game. Obviously, Harry Maguire was on the pitch for his goal that he scored, which won us the game. We have to kind of strip it back and go back to basics against the bigger teams, and I have got no problem in doing that if that is defending in a 5-4-1, playing on the transitions, using the second balls, because for the vast majority, it works. And not a lot of teams have an answer to a game plan which is can you get to that second ball before us? And it wasn't just Manchester United who recognised that long balls would be a problem for Liverpool. It was actually Liverpool's manager Arne Slot as well, who said, if you play Manchester United who come here with a low block and long balls, you know it's going to be difficult and you know you won't get to win the ball high up the pitch. I think number one thing to recognise from that Arne Slot quote is that Manchester United were not taking risks against Liverpool. It was a very risk-averse performance, and I think it was funny because the 2 o'clock game was Villa-Spurs, where both teams wanted to play their entire possession and the entire game in their own penalty box. I think Villa even lost the ball in their penalty box, which earned Spurs the corner, which got them their first goal. And it almost felt that Ruben Amorim went into the game going, we don't give Liverpool any chance to turn over the ball in our third and create chances from them high turnovers. If you recognise sort of what happened at Old Trafford a few years ago with Arne Slot when he come there, it was very much, can we get the ball and win it high up the pitch with Manchester United's sort of deep build-up. Manchester United have played a lot this season in their own half, but credit to Ruben Amorim, he's adapted to the opposition, and that's something that Manchester United fans have always asked for. It might not be a drastic shape shift, but in terms of the idea on the ball, it was definitely, don't give them a chance to win the ball in our box and get it into the opposition's end and win the second balls, and that worked. So massive, massive credit for Ruben Amorim for recognising that and sort of playing on that, because even though we lost control at some parts and the majority of parts throughout the game, we did get the first goal directly from that and did create a couple of chances from it too. So that is one of the most improved things about Manchester United this season, sort of that determination to get to the second balls and then physical levels. So yeah, a massive win for Ruben Amorim, massive win for Manchester United. Hopefully now we can kickstart something really special at the club, because got Brighton at home at the weekend. We can rest for the entire week. And yeah, let's just see where we get up to with Manchester United. I think the league table is looking very favourable right now. So if you did enjoy watching, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel. As always, we'll see you next week for more analysis. Thank you very much.